Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
We're live, so welcome to a Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So this show each week, my guests, well, we normally tend to have a holistic health theme, I suppose, but all the guests will give a perspective from either a mental, a physical or a spiritual perspective, or any combination of all three in general. Your host, my name's Karen Roberts. I do help women who have sort of lost their mojo. So my 10-day challenge is called Finding Mojo, helping them get back on track. And then really my focus is helping other health and wellness practitioners build a business online using social media without being a salesy weirdo. There we go. So today's guest is a little bit different. I would say it's definitely linked with the mental, from a mental perspective, and quite an interesting topic today. So I'm actually going to allow her to introduce herself. So Allison, if you could share with the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we can take it from there.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and hello everybody. Really nice to be here. My name's Allison Parkinson, and I'm a writer. So I write for companies and charities and, any organisation that wants help with words. But the thing that I've really got into over the past couple of years is I've become a children's author and illustrator. And that was really quite accidental. And it's quite interesting how sometimes, life can go at a bit of a right angle and take you on a path that you had no intention of going down or didn't think you ever would be able to. But that's what I do now. I write and illustrate children's books. And a lot of the books are based on my daughters who are mixed race. So the aim of it really is to ensure that more children can see themselves at the centre of stories.
Wow, there you go. So that's what sort of interested me, because I thought, those little illustrations, they look a little bit like me. Because growing up, I would agree. Yeah, there was, all the Disney princesses all looked the same. They certainly didn't have hair like I had. Well, not like now, but my natural hair. And although I don't personally remember really sort of thinking that way. I think maybe more so now. Do you think? Where do you think this is sort of all? How did this all start? Was it something that your children ever said to you?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a light bulb moment. It was it was the evening before World Book Day, and my daughter's primary school, like most schools, they encourage the children to come to school that day dressed as their favourite character, their favourite book character. And the girls always used to love to do that. And when they were little, they'd go as things like, Mr. Wolf and Lola from Charlie and Lola and bits and pieces like that. And one particular year, my youngest daughter, we'd left it right until the last minute. I think it was about 8:00 that night, and we were scrambling around trying to look for an outfit. And every character that she suggested, we didn't have the outfit that, would make her look like the character. One thing that she really wanted to do was have the hair of the character. So she kept suggesting somebody, and I'd say, well, we haven't got a blonde wig. It's nearly 9:00. What are we going to do? And then she got quite cross and she said, I can't think of any character that looks like me. And then the penny dropped. I thought, you're right. I can't think of one either. So, and then just literally out of the blue, this story idea popped into my head, and I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to start, writing a story about this girl, and then it all, developed from there.
Okay, and now that I can totally see now. I suppose when I don't really remember doing that as a child. I suppose maybe we were I was in that, older generation. Maybe that's more of a new thing for the kids in the last sort of 20, 30 years, maybe, that the dress up thing. So I can see how that would come about. And it's interesting that it does seem to be always the hair.
Yeah.
Relating to the hair, not so much maybe even the colour of the skin, but I think that's one thing that I really noticed growing up. I was brought up in a very, very white middle class area, and that's what stood out. It was, my hair doesn't go flat, it doesn't go smooth. It just sort of sticks out, even if I went in the swimming pool, and I can remember them laughing at me as I dived into the pool and come up, my hair's like the same size as it was. And I think that was the one thing that really affected me growing up, was the hair, not having the hair that goes smooth. So it's quite interesting you say that's what was bothering your daughter. And maybe that's what's brought this about, is made them realise that, there's no characters on the TV, there's no characters in books that maybe look like me. So, so how long ago was this that you sort of had
it was about about 7 years ago now. Probably about 7 years ago that she, the youngest one brought this up. So it's taken all of this time really to get the book together, because I remember writing the first story quite quickly afterwards, and it was almost like it opened the floodgates. As soon as I got this girl's name in my head, the story just came together, and I couldn't write it down quick enough. So, but there's been a massive change in that time, because there are so many books now that do, that they're far more diverse in lots of ways as well. But then still, I feel that I personally haven't found many chapter books where the central character is mixed race. It's definitely improving. There's some amazing picture books now and chapter books, but still, I feel like mixed race. There's not that many still, and there's room for so many more as well. And that's the beauty of it now. I think now's the time where people can share their stories, and you don't have to do it through the traditional publishing route. You can now, because self-publishing is very easy, everyone's got the opportunity to share their stories, which can only be good for everybody really, because, we've all got good stories, but sometimes we don't, we're our own worst enemies, because we tell ourselves that no, it's, no one's going to be interested in this, so I just won't bother. I'll just keep it to myself.
Yeah, very true. It's something that I would have thought that only a certain people are going to go towards. I'm personally, I can remember not liking doing that at school, making stories. I didn't feel like I had that creative. I could come up with the idea, I could look at, maybe take it from somebody else, but to come up with some new idea, I didn't feel like I had that. That's a real skill set. But I suppose if you're writing anyway, that's your profession in a way. All you needed was the idea, and then you could run with it, right?
Well, the funny thing is, I was the same as you. When I was a child, I didn't really, I used to like people telling me stories, but if I had a choice of reading a book or drawing a picture, I'd always draw. I'd always be like drawing tigers and bits and pieces like that. And funny enough, like I started my career as a reporter, so I was always trained to write, like short, sharp sentences. So when I'd be in the newsroom and, some of my colleagues would say, I'm going to write a book, I used to think, well, good luck. That's never going to be me, because once I've written about 5 paragraphs, that's me done. I can't think of anything else to say. So it's really strange, because I never thought I'd be able to write, longer than about a page worth of writing. And it just came. So, sometimes these things just happen for no real reason, no reason that you can think of. And it almost like can open up a channel where you can start doing things that you previously thought that you'd not be able to, you'd not have the imagination to.
Right. And I suppose maybe that's it. it's the like most things in life. It's when it's it's obviously it's a big thing, isn't it, to complete a whole book. So I suppose maybe the idea of doing the whole thing can be very overwhelming, but like with anything, break it down into bite-sized pieces, then you're more likely to do that. So for you, where do your actual story ideas come from? How do you get those?
Well, with the character that I made up, the character that was based on both of my daughters, the character's called Lorella Swift, and the story behind that, she goes on holiday with her mum and dad to the Isle of Wight, and they go into a charity shop, and in this charity shop she finds things that almost act as keys that enable her to travel through time and dimensions, but they only have this power in the shop, and it's almost like the shop acts like an amplifier, and it amplifies the vibrations and allows her to travel, but only through the shop. And once the items are out of the shop, they're just normal items again. And the good thing is, like, all of the items that are in the stories have come from charity shops. So often I've got no idea how the story is going to go, but I might find something in a charity shop. Like, for example, the first story was a rug, which I got from a shop in Penge. and I thought, I know, I'll do a little bit of research about, who produced the first rug. And it turned out that one of the first ones were produced in Persia, ancient Persia. And I knew nothing about Persia. Modern day Iran now, but I knew nothing about the country at all. And then did this research, and it opened up this fantastic story about, an ancient civilization called the Achaemenid Empire, and a king called Cyrus the Great. And there was a female warrior called Panthea, who was a really powerful woman. And then all of these stories just, it like put her in that place. And then in another story, I found a shell that from a charity shop in Catford, and this shell is a power. It's called Power, P-A-U-A, and it comes from New Zealand. And again, I thought, oh, I know, let's go online and find out a little bit about Power. And then all of this information came out. So again, it took her on another adventure. So it's more, it's almost an adventure for me as well, because I have no idea where the story is going to take me until a certain item will, appeal to me. And I think, all right, okay, let's find out, what is this and where does it come from? So it's great.
Fantastic. So what were your daughter's first reactions when you came out with your first book?
Oh, well, that was lovely, actually, because, they were so young at the time. And, when I first read it to them, it was literally only, I'd printed it out on A4, so it wasn't published or anything like that. I'd literally, typed it up on a laptop and then printed it off. And I read it to them when we were on holiday in the Isle of Wight as well. So we're in the chalet, and I said, right, I'm going to read a story to you. And, and it was lovely. It was a really lovely response. And the one of the most beautiful things for me as well, the next World Book Day, my youngest daughter went as Lorella Swift. So, that's the character. And it's laughable, really, because I bet her friends were thinking, who's that? Who are you dressed as? I've never heard of her, But she took to it so much that she decided to go as Lorella. And that was beautiful. That was the icing on the cake, really.
Yeah, that must have been wonderful for you. And how old were they? What was the sort of time difference from you having the idea to actually reading it to them in the chalet?
Yeah. Well, the first book, I would say probably about 6 months to about 6 months, I think, 6 months to a year, probably about 6 months. And then, initially the idea was, well, it's just for them, it's just a story for them. And maybe we'll just leave it on this one where she goes to Persia. Oh. And then another story, I thought, well, hold on a minute, she might go, where else might she go? So I was writing other stories, for them. But then I'd mentioned it to friends and they said, well, why don't you try and get it published? But then self-doubt comes in, doesn't it? It's like, oh no, people are going to laugh at you and they're going to say, who do you think you are, that this isn't good enough? And so I had to fight that. And then, so it was a bit of a, angel and devil on my shoulder almost saying, yeah, do it. And then the other one saying, no, you're going to make a fool of yourself and you should be focusing on, your paid work, stop daydreaming and get on with normal life. But I just thought, do you know what? There's something making me do it, urging me to do it. And I'm just going to go with it. And what's the worst that can happen? So I just decided to keep on going with it, really.
There you go. And well, you've just said it there, isn't it? Isn't it interesting that when, you're good enough to work as a journalist for companies and but when it comes to doing it for yourself, why do you think this self-doubt, because I hear it all the time, and trust me, I still battle with it with myself on certain things. It's like I'm brilliant at doing stuff for other people, and then when it comes to doing it for you, you start having these self-doubts of, yes, is it, am I, is it going to be worthy? Is it going to be good enough? Where do you think all this comes from? Because I find it quite fascinating that we feel that we can be good enough for others and not good enough for ourselves.
I know it's a tricky one. I think maybe if it's something that's very personal, and it's almost like you're exposing yourself, while you can maybe hide. If you're writing a story about somebody else, you've got that distance. While if you're writing something that's purely if you're basically saying to the world, this is me, this is my work. And so maybe it's the fact that you're almost like exposing yourself. But I really do feel though that maybe it's something that I'm finding as I'm getting older. If you get these, like, I think sometimes people describe it as the whisper. If you get this whisper that keeps on saying to you, do it, go on, just try. What's the worst that can happen? I think you should really go with it, because there's something driving you to do something, and it could be something that you've got to learn in your life or whatever. But it's again, it's another one of those that I remember reading a book years ago called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I love that, the idea of, like, there are going to be things in life that are going to be really challenging, but like, just try it. What's the worst that can happen? And that's what I've been telling myself, really. It's like, just go with it. And for example, I'm quite happy to say to people, a few years ago, I'd have been quite happy to say to people, I used to be a reporter, la la la, I write for business, la la la. But then to say I'm an author, it was almost like, oh no, I can't say that. Who do I think I am? And now I'm thinking, well, I am, so what, so it's almost like sometimes being your own cheerleader. It's like, you know why you're doing it. You're not just, there's a reason why you're doing it. So be proud about it and just say it. And that's what I want to really encourage other people to do as well. Because I bet most of us have got the same thing, where there's something that we want to do in life, and it might become more important as we get older. And there's so many excuses that we can, make up for ourselves. Say, no, well, I'll do it tomorrow, or, I haven't got time to do it because so many other things are a priority. I think sometimes you've got to just say, look, I've got to do it. And, and I'm not doing it for like an ultimate aim, because sometimes things change. Just do it for the love of it, and then just see what happens from there.
There you go. Brilliant advice, because I would 100% agree with that. There's something that's gone on with the whole sort of system that we will obviously, people are busy. They've got to put food on the table. So all these excuses can come up. Yeah. And again, maybe even thinking that it's such a big project. Oh, it's too big. Whereas, break it down. You don't have to do it all in a week, right?
Exactly.
It takes as long as it's going to take. But when you are on purpose, and I think we're seeing this so much more now with regards to, I think, what's happened over the last couple of years, where people have had to stop. It's forced them to stop. and then they have sort of looked inward and maybe realised, are they following their purpose, or have they sort of got caught in a job where, you know, it's a difficult position because you can't leave because you've got bills to pay and the mortgage to pay, but they're not necessarily following their true purpose. And you're right, I do think that when you are in alignment with what you truly desire, what you truly want to do, it will just flow.
Yes, definitely.
Right? It will just flow, because it is, you are in there's if there's no resistance, you are in alignment, and it's just going to come through. But there is something going on with the psyche, this fear of failure, fear of being, like you said, I think you said earlier, about almost being ridiculed. You didn't want people to sort of look at it, or judgment, fear of judgment, all these stories. Again, as you know, you're right, these are just stories that we tell ourselves.
Exactly.
Because people aren't going to they're never going to have that reaction. But it's something that we've created in our own mind that other people might ridicule us. And I do think, again, as we get older, we care less about that. It doesn't affect, it seems to be the youngsters, you know, if I could sort of explain to my daughters, which I do quite often, to really not worry about what other people think of you.
Exactly.
Number one, it's none of your business, and number two, they probably aren't.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I always think, I wish I could, you know, go back to like either my younger self, or, as you were saying, you know, tell your daughters or, you know, your younger relatives, you know, that when that little voice of doubt comes in and starts saying, well, you can't go out, you can't wear this, or you can't say this, you want to, like, you know, say to them, tell that, you know, go and tell that voice to go and do one, you know, just, exactly. Because, you know, you're not valid.
We are told that we have 60 to 70 thoughts a day. And 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had yesterday and the day before. So we're in this, we get caught up in this perpetual, this just where we think, if we think our thoughts create our reality, because we've been having the same thoughts. So that little voice is only coming from what it's known. And because writing a book is outside of because you haven't done it before, it isn't a true voice. It's just what's gone on in the past. And when we understand that's what's actually keeping us in this same situation in life, is because we're thinking the same thoughts. That when we come out, try and step out of that and consciously maybe try to think some new thoughts, that's how our lives will actually change. So yes, advice to any of the listeners, especially the youngsters, is not to listen. That voice isn't real. It's just trying to keep you safe in what it knows. So we don't listen to that voice. But yes, I do think it does affect the youngsters. But I still think, I still have to, fight with it. I'm not saying that I don't have this, because I do. But amazing things can happen when you do switch off that voice. So, I mean, how did you feel? So can it take us to the day that you received the book in your hand? Once it was fully published, and you did all the illustrations as well. So you're an artist as well. So how phenomenal. You illustrated it, is that right?
Yeah, well, again, that was accidental, because I'd done art up to A level, 100 years ago, and again, I didn't get the grade I expected, so was disappointed with that. And again, so you get a bit of a knock, so you then start saying to yourself, well, I can't be that good really at art. So and then work came along, and it gets busy, and you don't really get you stop getting time to do things, don't you? And anyway, to cut a long story short, I'd come up with another story about a tiger, because I've always loved tigers. And after this Lorella story came in, this tiger story came into my head really quickly as well. And I thought, well, I don't know where this has come from, but I think I wrote that in a day. It was just a rhyming picture book. And anyway, my husband heard it and he said, you should definitely get that one, get that one published, and you'll probably be able to do that quicker because it's already there, it's already written, and why don't you try and try this one first. So I went to see a friend who's a designer, and I'd done some quick drawings to give her an idea of the type of illustrations I wanted, but I was going to her to ask if she could help me with the book, and also if she knew of any illustrators that could help me. And she saw the drawings and she said, well, use those. And I was like, no, I can't do that. It'd be ridiculous. They're only, they're only felt tip. And she'd do it. There's nothing wrong with them. She'd use yours. It's how you want, it's how you visualize the story. So do it. So that's how that happened. But again, there was a bit of self-doubt there where it's, oh no, look at it,
It's not good enough. It's not
exactly.
good enough.
So funnily enough, the Tiger book, which is called Tigertail, that was the first one that came through. And when it came through, there was mixed feelings about it, weirdly, because I was really excited, but then it was like, oh no, what have I done? It's like, oh, it's physical now. I can't. It's not an real idea anymore. Yeah, and so that was a bit of a learning curve, because at first it was like, oh, I don't even know if I want to show people. It's like, what are you on? And then, I had a good talk with myself and said, don't be ridiculous, it's fine, and see what other people think. And, people did like it. And then going back to the Lorella book, so the first one of the Lorella series was published in 2019. I'm losing track of time now. Was it 2019 or 2020? Bear with me a second. I have to remember when it was published.
So it is quite
new.
Recent.
Yeah. Actually, it was last year. I'm losing the plot. The Lorella one was published last year, so 2021. So yeah, that felt really special when that came through, because this is a story that had started the whole ball rolling, and to see that in print, looking like a proper paperback book, was it was really exciting, and I couldn't wait to get it out there, and I had to wait because of lockdown and all, bits and pieces like that. Yes. So it was really exciting when it came through.
And I bet for you, Jill, because I know you told me before that the character is sort of an in-between of both daughters. So they both look like her in a way. So it must have been incredibly exciting for them to see. And how proud did they feel of their mum is now a published author, and the story is really, they are the character. I mean, what an inspiration for two little girls. And how old are they now? So how old are they now?
Yeah, they're 20 and 16 now. So they are. They're very proud, and it's just part of it feels as well about it feels like we're preserving something, because again, maybe when you think about things, as as you're getting older and as family members get older and things like that, and for example, just to give you a quick example, my mum passed away many, many years ago, but she's mentioned in the second book, and there's a, well, if we've got time, I can tell you the story behind it, because there's, I'll just tell you really quickly. I mentioned that power shell. Well, it was Mother's Day, and I really wanted to get something that reminded me of my mum. And, to a point where I'd said to my husband, I need to pop out, and I just need to go and find something. It was like this real urge to get something. And my mum had hazel eyes, so I was looking for a hazel bush to put in the garden. And, of course, couldn't find one. And I found myself, outside a charity shop yet again, went in and found this shell, which, was beautiful and green and blue. It's like treasure. And it said power, from New Zealand. And I just had this real urge to get this shell, because there was something about it, and Mum. So anyway, I took it home and decided to have a look online and find out a bit more about power shells. And then it said that power, very sacred to the Maori, and they use them in lots of carvings and in their buildings, and it's a sacred shell, and they're always used as eyes because they believe that power are the eyes of your ancestors looking down on you from the sky. And I just thought, oh my God, that, it really felt like that was Mum saying, I'm still around. I'm just, keeping an eye on you. Yeah. So the power shell was then incorporated in the second story about Lorella. And it's the story dedicated to my mum. And at the end of the book, I explain about buying the power shell and the fact that it was on Mother's Day and what it meant. So I feel by doing that, my mum's eternal now because she's in that book as well.
Yes.
So somebody might read that book 50 years from now and they'll learn about my mum. And I just thought, it's keeping all of the family eternal,
Yes. Well, you've created a legacy, haven't you? You've really created a legacy. And what are your children going on to do? Has it inspired them to do anything different to what maybe they thought they were going to do? Because I suppose for them now, like the world's their all oyster. Yeah. I mean, 20 and 16 obviously is very young. My girls are just, doing what they need to do for now. It's not their eternal career. But has it changed their thought process on what is possible?
Yes, I hope so. I hope it's given them this idea that, just go for anything you want to do. Don't ever limit yourself by saying, well, that, I'd love to do that, but that's not me because, I'm not X, Y, or Z. It's like anything is possible. If you think that you can do it, just try. And it's not like, okay, if you think you're going to do it, the fairy's going to wave a magic wand and hey presto, you'll be there the following day. It's like, it will take time, but I really do believe that if you've got that desire and the determination, then just go for it. And, because as we were saying before, half of it, I think, is your own self-belief. And if you really believe that you can do something, then, that shows, and it almost like radiates from you. And I think it can then open up, it can open up opportunities when before, if you're telling yourself, I can't do it, you almost got blinkers on and you can't see things that are almost like in neon lights pointing, so I hope, but sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's almost knocked out of us in school, isn't it? Certain things is sort of, that's daydreaming. No, you've got to be realistic. Be accountant, be the careers advice.
Yeah,
my careers advice at school was to be an accountant. Can you imagine? I mean, just like. For real? No, not anything against accountants, by the way. That, but you go with what you're passionate about. Certainly wasn't my passion. Certainly wasn't going to be the thing that I should have been going for. But it's almost like, again, I suppose the fear of, from some parents' point of view, they don't do it, maliciously or anything, but the fear of, I want my children to do well, and if they go down that route, I can't see it working, so let's keep it safe.
Exactly.
Go for what is, well, there is, we've learnt in the last 2 years, have we not, that there is nothing that is safe.
Exactly.
Things could happen tomorrow, and a business could be shut down, or in the future, AI could take over that role, So I suppose it doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from a caring, how are you going to survive if you go down this route? But I do hopefully feel, especially with a story like yours, and, again, going back to what's happened in the last 2 years, I do think that maybe people have finally realised that, well, the end of the day, we're working the majority of our lives, right? Yeah. Why not do something that you love, that you are more in alignment with, rather than doing a job that you really dislike and you're only doing it because of survival? We don't want to just survive; we want to thrive.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So what anything that your children want to do in the future?
Well, my youngest wants to follow a career in dance in some way, which is, and again, that's all come from her, because that started off with there was a TV program on a few years ago, and she loved it, and used to watch it, and then you'd come in the front room and you'd see her spinning round on one foot. And it's like, how did you learn to do that? I just saw it on telly. And then, we thought, she really wants to do this. So we looked into, getting, looking to find out if there are any dance classes locally. So we didn't push her. I know, people do things for whatever reason. I'm not, saying, oh, no, this is wrong. I don't mean that at all. But, I know lots of people will encourage their kids to do certain classes, so they get that taste. And we always encourage them to do different things, but dance hadn't been one of them. There wasn't any reason for it. But I thought, I only want them to do things that they want to do, rather than me thinking they might want to do it, if you know what I mean. So, so when we saw that she really had a passion for dance, we said, oh, come on, let's find out if there are any local classes. And that, that was that. And my eldest daughter, she did an apprenticeship, and she's now, she's got herself an amazing job doing something that, she really loves. And again, it wasn't, it's all come from her. And,
Brilliant.
like we didn't say, no, you've got to go to, university, or you've got to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, this is your life.
Yes.
You choose what you want to do. And the main thing is, be happy. And, and it doesn't matter if, we've always, just thinking about myself, like, you'd said that you were given advice by your careers teacher to be an accountant. That was my first job. And I just about scraped O-level maths. I had to do, second attempt, I just scraped it. So when I'd seen an interview for an accountancy, and at the time that would have been a dream job, and it was like, it paid very well. It was, very secure. And I got this interview, and I thought, well, this is a bit strange. Went for the interview, and I said, maths isn't my thing. And they said, oh, it doesn't matter. It's about being a people person. And I thought, oh, that's all right. I'm good at, can't stop talking, so that'll do, And, so anyway, started the job, and then thought, this is a nightmare, and everybody was, people weren't unfriendly or anything like that, but I just didn't get it. And it didn't matter how hard I was trying. I was thinking, this may as well be, you may as well be talking to me in Martian, because it's not sinking in. And I left that job, which was a real, I'd only been there for about 2-3 weeks. And I thought, I've got to get out of here. I can't, this isn't me. And I know my mum and dad were really worried at the time. It's like, what are you doing? You're throwing away a career, and you've got in there, and now you're not even giving it a chance. And weirdly, so I left, had no job to go to, and saw an advert in my local paper for a trainee reporter. So it was, if I hadn't have gone for that accountancy job and left it, I wouldn't have ever looked at that. So it's just weird how it's almost you've got to do things and fail at things to find your true path,
And I think that you've just hit the nail on the head. There's an array of things, and if you don't go for any of them, how will you ever know? You may have totally loved that job, because people do, so I'm not putting down accounts, I'm just saying it wasn't for me. But if you hadn't tried it, you wouldn't have known, right? Exactly. So, and if you hadn't have then lost a job and been looking at that time, that wouldn't have come up. It's funny, isn't it? It's how we can look back after the events and go, that's why that happened. Whereas at the time, it might have seemed like the worst thing. I mean, so my background, fitness, because I wanted to be a dancer. So go girl. Yes, if that's your passion. I think I just wanted to be one of the backing dancers for Janet Jackson, to be honest. But that was what I wanted to do. I didn't get into dancing school. I failed my physical, actually. They said I was too big. I couldn't lose enough weight. I don't think they'd say that now. I got through the audition, but failed the physical, and I was mortified. But then I was introduced to fitness. It was a Step, I think, when Step launched back in the early 90s, and it was like, oh, I can dance around a studio and still get paid. So that was sort of the next thing. And then I had a quarter of a century in that industry. I absolutely loved what I did. So it did stem from doing, I've always been one for a little bit of a rebel, I suppose, but always gone for things that I wanted to do. It wasn't about the financial side of it. I wanted to enjoy doing what I was doing. And I think really that is got to be the advice for everybody. So for you, I mean, you're obviously encouraging, number one, you're trying to encourage children to see themselves of the center of the stories, right? And how are you doing this? You are you working with schools in any way? How are you doing that?
Yeah, well, I'm a governor at my local school in Catford, Sandhurst Primary School, and that's where both daughters went. So I'm a governor there, and I support them wherever I can in terms of, they're a great school. They've always been, a really fantastic school where they're, really encouraging children to see themselves as successful. And it's like, you place yourself in the center of the story. So they've always done that. And I've been helping them, looking for books and, links with local bookshops where there are more diverse books now. So, to make sure that their library is really diverse, and it always has been. It's building on the great work that they've been doing. But I also do wherever I can. I do school visits. I do storytelling sessions every Thursday morning at my local library. These are for really young, preschool children. But again, it's sharing lots of different stories with them. And, so giving them a taste of lots of different, scenarios and different characters. And I, wherever possible, I'll go to book fairs and, author events and things like that. And, or festivals. And, as well as selling my books, it's, telling children about the stories and also showing them the illustrations and saying, look, I did these with pencils and felt tips. And so that means you can do drawings like this at home too, or at school if you've got, felt tips and pencils. So don't think you have to have like an artist's easel or something like that. If you've got a bit of scrap paper and some pencils, even, just you can do a black and white picture with, with a normal writing pencil. So, just have a go. So that's what I try and do wherever possible. Whenever I get the opportunity to speak to children, it's telling them about the stories and then saying, well, put yourself, why don't you have a try of writing a story and putting yourself right in the, you're the hero in the story, and where are you going to take yourself? What are you going to do?
And because that's what life is.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
you are the center of your own story. And I would agree that maybe some people feel closed in because they feel that which is only a story they're telling, going back to that, that there's nothing for them. And I suppose, so something comes to mind, which I do think is brilliant. I've got to admit, growing up, I detested period dramas, but again, because there was never going to be me in them unless unless I was a slave that was bought and sold. So obviously there was no interest in that growing up. And so what's changed now? I mean, I can't believe I've watched both seasons of Bridgerton because they've changed the whole thing. There's all sorts in high roles, the Queen, and so I don't think I'd ever really realised. Well, I suppose it is more of a modern take on it. But I didn't like the fluffy period dramas. But maybe subconsciously, there was something going on that, I'm never going to get a good part in one of those.
I know.
And actually, I can remember I did ballet. The reason I wanted to be a dancer, I did ballet all my life. And my ballet teacher, very old-fashioned, very strict ballet teacher, told me when I was about 7, you'll never be a ballerina because of the colour of your skin. And it absolutely floored me. And obviously it's something that's stuck in my memory all my life. So where I've said that I don't think things like that have affected me, they obviously have. On a subconscious level. So it's so brilliant that it's nice to see now in the films that they're changing this, because it doesn't matter if it's not true to history. It's a story. It doesn't matter what colour the skin of the person in the story is.
Yeah.
So, I think what you're doing is a phenomenally important thing, because, these kids, the kids that go, wayward, they just really believe that there's nothing else out there for them and they can't do anything. So then they choose to go, down the not so good path, or getting into crime, because they feel that they're never going to have the opportunities that other people have. And what a shame. So, and the thing is to get them when they're young. So what you're doing, do you even realise the kind of impact that you could potentially have on these kids, on their lives, sort of moving forward?
Well, I do feel, excuse me, I don't want this to sound really corny or, pretentious, but I do feel very privileged sometimes when I've been in situations where a child will see the book and it has an effect on them. Like, for example, I was at a fair last year, a summer fair, and it was the first time that I'd been able to physically get out there, see people face to face, and start promoting the Lorella books. And a little girl came over, mixed race girl, and she came and had a look at the books, and then walked away, and then came back with her mum, and she could tell she was quite shy. And her mum said, my daughter wants me to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about the book? And so, I said, this is her. So I showed the picture of the girl that I'd drawn. And I said, right, this is Lorella, and she's 10, and she's from South London. She goes to primary school in South London. And each time I was saying, the more I was describing this girl, this little girl's face was lighting up, because you could see she thought, well, that's me, Yes. And she and I said, how old are you? And she went, I'm 10 too. And of course, Lorella's 10. And so she bought the book, and I just thought, do you know what? If that one child reads that book and and loves it and sees herself there, sees herself in ancient Persia, being a hero and funny and brave and all the other things, and not like you were saying before, with some stories, it's almost like, okay, if you are going to be a black character, you're going to have to be a victim of some sort, or
victim or the bully. Something to do with crime, and it is. So again, we don't know what kind of effect this has day in, day out on the psyche of people. I mean, my mum actually changed my primary schools because she went to the parent evening, and the teacher said to her, "Wow, I can't understand how well she's doing for a West Indian."
Oh my God.
And my mum was just like,
wow.
Excuse me? So she changed. I actually moved primary schools because of that. And again, that could have had an effect on my psyche, hearing all these sort of negative things. And you're right, there's so much that whenever you used to see it is all changing. And for some people, even myself, I didn't think, but now we're having this conversation, all these things are coming up, and I'm thinking, actually I remember this. So it probably did have an impact on me subconsciously, because none of us do any of these things. We don't stop ourselves doing what we want because we consciously want. It's all on a it's all unconscious, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the knockbacks you have throughout life. So how amazing for you to really know that you really could have an absolutely massive impact on people to really just, and I suppose that's the message, isn't it, for everybody to know that anything is, it doesn't matter, anything, if you want to do it, go for it. So I know you went down the self-publishing route. Was there any particular reason why you did that?
Well, I didn't really know, I didn't know a thing about how to publish a book. I hadn't got a clue. And so I automatically thought, well, you know, the only way you can do it really is through a traditional publishing deal. And so, you know, I thought, well, how do you do that? You've got to get an agent, and then they try and find a publisher for you. And so I sent the story to a couple of agents, and, you know, again, being the eternal optimist, I pinged the email off, and I thought about half an hour's time, they're going to come back and say, this is the best story we've ever heard, and we've ever, you know, heard in our lives, and we want to you know, sign you up. And it was just like tumbleweed, not a thing. So I thought, oh, that's strange. I tried a few others, agents, didn't really get any response at all. And then there were a few opportunities where you could go direct to the publisher. So I entered it was like an open submission where you could send your stories to the publishers. And I got one response, which seemed really positive. And they said, yeah, we like the idea. It could do with a bit of development, you know, but try again. And so I replied again, and obviously somebody different saw it, and it was just like no, you know, we're not interested. So I started thinking, all right, now I've tried a few. Maybe my story isn't good enough, and you know, unless I can get a proper traditional, publishing deal, I'll probably just leave it as just a story for my daughters, because obviously it isn't good enough. And then weirdly, I'd been asked to do some blogs for some clients, and I thought, well, you know, I'll do a blog course, because I think I know how to do blogs, but I'm going to do a course so I know exactly, you know, what the difference is between a blog and, you know, writing general content for a website. So I saw this blog course run by a person called Melissa Addy. And at the very bottom so I signed up to the blog course, and at the very bottom of the course information, there was some blurb about Melissa, and it said, Melissa Addy is a self-published author who specializes in historical fantasy. And she's also, you know, she writes for adults and children. I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's a coincidence, because that's what, you know, my stories are historical fantasy to an extent. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to, as well as doing a blog course, I'm going to do a self-publishing course. And it was a total eye-opener. And, you know, because I'm thinking, she's the writer in residence at the British Library. And I'm thinking, well, if she's self-published, she's successful, her books are really good quality, then there's nothing, you know, why am I saying that self-publishing is somehow like an inferior way of publishing? And she explained it, you know, she was just saying, you know, it just opens up opportunities now for so many more people. And she was saying it still has to be good quality. You know, you have to compete with the traditionally published books. So the stories still have to be good quality and have to be printed. You know, the actual finished product needs to look the part as well, you know. So, but she said, you know, go for it. You can do it. And it was as a result of that course that it completely changed my mind about self-publishing. And that's why I want to, you know, encourage other people to do the same. So don't put yourself off by telling yourself that self-publishing is somehow the poor relation and only stories that, you know, don't make it are self-published, because that's not the case at all. Now, a lot of authors are self-publishing because they retain total control over their books and, you know, when it's published and how long it stays in print and things like that.
Right.
So,
anybody out there who's thinking about it, maybe come and get in touch with Alison. So to the listeners, I mean, depending on where you're, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll have all of Alison's links down below. But if you're just listening on the radio to this, Alison, how would people find you?
Yeah, well, they can go to my website, which is called Tiger's Eye. Tiger's Eye. I'm losing the plot. tigerseyebooks.co.uk. And they can also try AllisonParkinson.co.uk. So there's 2 websites, and there's 2 L's in Allison, just to be awkward, otherwise it'll ping back. Yeah, so it's tigerseyebooks.co.uk and AllisonParkinson.co.uk. And you can go on there, and there's a contact section, so you can, ping me a message and I'll get back to you. You can also get in touch with me. You can follow me on Instagram, and you can find me there, Allison Parkinson Writes, and you can also find me on Facebook as well. So that's probably the best way. So through my website, follow me on Instagram and also on Facebook.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for today, Alison. That's been absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, I couldn't imagine that there's a book in me. I've never been much of a writer. But to anybody out there who, has always, maybe toyed with that idea, and maybe they don't think they're good enough, try You're Good Enough. Get in the flow or get in touch with Allison. So yes, thank you for your time, Allison. I wish you all the best with your books.
Thank you.
To the listeners, I will be back next week, and if there is anybody out there that is looking to build their business working from home using social media, then please get in touch. I've just launched my 12-week mentorship program. If you go to just KarenRobertsCoaching.com/6, the number 6 figures, then that will take you to where you can download my ebook. Okay, so I've written an ebook, not quite the same as writing stories. But you can download my ebook and infograph from there. And if you'd like to join my Facebook group, then you can from that. And obviously I will be back next week with another Coffee with Karen. So Allison, finally, do you have anything in the pipeline? Are you currently focusing on writing a book at the moment?
Yes, yeah. I'm writing the 3rd Lorella adventure in the series. I've also written another tiger book, especially because I thought, well, I have to. It's the year of the tiger. So I've written that, and I've got 3 more illustrations to do. So I'm hoping to publish both of those books this year. And I've also got another chapter book idea, which is going to be centered around sea glass. So, because I've got an obsession with the sea as well as tigers and history. So that's, plenty more story ideas. I just need to crack on and, get them finished or do the illustrations. But I think I'm going to be busy for a few years.
Right, brilliant. And how long does it tend to take you to complete a book? Do you have it, or do you just go with the flow and just sort of do a little bit each week?
Yeah, well, the picture books, they don't take long at all, because for some, I don't know why, but for some reason I always write them like a rhyme, so it's almost like a little poem, and I can do those in a day, and then it takes a while to do the illustrations, so probably, it's getting the time to sit down and and draw. So it could take maybe, I'd say probably about 3 or 4 months to do the illustrations, purely because of fitting in time to do them. And then the chapter books, they take a bit longer because I do the research around the item as well. So I do research around the history of the item that is her key that takes her back in time. So that's the last book, or the 3rd book that I'm on now, is probably it's probably about a year. Thinking about it, it's going to take me about a year to to get it all together and to check things and and then do the drawings as well. So so
but then you're working full time, you've got a family, you still got life going on. So it just goes to show that anybody can do this. It doesn't matter what you're currently doing. if you can just find even an hour a day, 2 hours a day, the job is going to get done. It might actually be easier, break it up a bit. And once you're in the flow, you're in the flow. So,
exactly. Just
look forward. Yeah, just keep doing it. Just do it. As Nike says, just do it. So, yes, once again, thank you for your time, Alison. And to the listeners, I will see you next week. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.